of rights, and another who, by the wisdom of his judicial pen, having global exposure, having contributed so immensely to the constitution law, not only of India, but of different countries. And this would enlighten us to look as to what ways we can move further towards a glorifying future of human rights. Thank you very much.
For organizations like PACE and common people like us to come together to ensure that our fundamental rights and constitutional rights are upheld and not violated easily either at the hands of the state or other non-state actors. I now invite Mr. Prashant Bhushan to kindly commence our session. Mr. Bhushan needs no introduction. We all are very aware of his dedication against such human rights issues, against corruption, and against various other rights-based issues. In fact, it's a privilege now to have such distinguished speakers from both the bar and the bench, and without wasting any further time, I request Sir to deliver his speech.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here for this program organized by PACE, and I'm very happy to see so many young people here. It's very important for all of us, especially young people, to constantly revisit this issue of human rights, and today being Human Rights Day, this is indeed a good occasion for us to revisit what is the importance of these rights, what have the courts done, what are the other institutions to protect these rights, etc., and what are the threats today, where do we stand today. In fact, today is now is an even more important time to revisit human rights because of the very, very serious threat that that is being posed to human rights in this country today. What we are seeing today is, in my view, a situation which is more serious, more dangerous than what we saw even during the emergency, when fundamental rights had been suspended, a large number of people had been put in jail. Today what we are seeing is a very, very concerted, insidious, but a far more dangerous and threatening assault on human rights in this country. The assault is not merely coming in the form of vigilantism, which we are seeing in this country, where people from minority communities, rationalists, etc., can be threatened, can be beaten up, can be killed, where people can be threatened in the name of nationalism, etc. This is one part of it. The other part is the assault on all our institutions. All those institutions which were created and which were set up for protecting human rights or for protecting us against corruption, which an anti-corrupt or a non-corrupt society has been held by the Supreme Court to be part of the right to life and liberty, and therefore all the anti-corruption institutions are being threatened in this country today. And therefore we are in a very, very, very serious situation. We have to begin by understanding where we stand today. If you look at the assault on all the democratic institutions today, if you start with the institutions which were set up against corruption or which were supposed to have been set up against corruption, Lokpal, as you all know, was one such institution, was supposed to be the apex institution to deal with the issue of corruption. That Lokpal came after a long struggle for the Lokpal or for the Jan Lokpal Act. Eventually a Lokpal law had to be enacted under the pressure of public opinion by Parliament. That act was notified 3 years ago. But for the last 3 years, we have not seen the appointment of a Lokpal. One excuse after another has been trotted out for not appointing a Lokpal. The latest excuse being that there is no leader of opposition. Why? Because they say that there is no opposition party which has 10% strength in the Lok Sabha. There is no law which says that you need to have 10% strength in the Lok Sabha in order to have a leader of opposition. The government is relying on some obscure ruling of the speaker, of the first speaker, when there is an explicit law which says that leader of opposition means the leader of the largest opposition party in the Lok Sabha. But unfortunately, despite all this, Lokpal has not been appointed. The second most important institution was the Central Vigilance Commission. Now, Central Vigilance Commission, apart from being the apex vigilance body or authority in the country, was given two other important roles. One was a role assigned to it first by that Supreme Court judgment in that Vinit Narayan or the Hawala case, and that was thereafter institutionalized in the CBC Act and in the CBI Act, which said that the Central Vigilance Commission shall supervise the functioning of the CBI. The second role was assigned by the Supreme Court and thereafter by the Whistleblower Act. Unfortunately, that Whistleblower Act, though it was enacted in 2011, but it has not yet been notified. For 2011 or 2012, it has not yet been notified. But the Supreme Court had passed an order in that Satyendra Dubey's case saying that we need to have a whistleblower protection authority and an authority which can entertain complaints of whistleblowers about corruption, etc. And the Central Vigilance Commission could be that authority. And therefore, a notification was issued by the government empowering the CBC. So the CBC is the authority today empowered to receive complaints from whistleblowers, get them investigated, protect the whistleblowers, take action against any corrupt person that is found as a result of those investigations. Now for about 1 year, there are 3 posts in the CBC. Out of those 3 posts, 2 posts were kept vacant. When we raised this issue in the Supreme Court, why are these posts being kept vacant? Then they appointed 2 people, but they appointed 2 thoroughly corrupt people, against whom the CBC itself had said that he had fabricated the confidential report of his subordinate. Fabricated the report, that's the finding of the CBC itself, and that man is appointed to the CBC. The other person had all kinds of complaints against him, including interfering. He used to be in the CBDT, etc. Those people have been appointed. Now we have challenged their appointments in the Supreme Court. That challenge is pending in the Supreme Court. But they have succeeded in destroying the Central Vigilance Commission. The third anti-corruption institution was the CBI. Now the CBI, we all know, you see, the Lokpal, this whole battle for the Lokpal, one of the major issues was whether the CBI should be under the control of the government or whether the CBI should be placed under the control of the Lokpal. Eventually the government did not agree, and the Lokpal Act also says that though the Lokpal shall have supervisory jurisdiction over the CBI, but the government shall retain administrative jurisdiction over the CBI. And using this administrative jurisdiction of transfers, etc., they have been controlling. However, 2 important things happened. One, in that Jain Hawala case, and thereafter in the CBC Act, CBI Act and the Lokpal Act, it says that the director of CBI shall have a minimum fixed tenure of 2 years before which he cannot be removed by the government, to provide independence to at least the director of CBI. It also said that the director shall be selected by a selection committee of the Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition and the Chief Justice of India. Now what this government has done, something unprecedented, totally sinister, They knew that this present director or the previous director was to retire on the 2nd of December. Yet, no meeting of the selection committee was convened, and here there was no problem of leader of opposition because the act itself said leader of opposition shall be the leader of the largest opposition party irrespective of its strength in parliament. And yet no meeting was convened of the selection committee. Why? In order to appoint their own man as the acting director of the CBI. And for that, the senior most officer of the CBI, who was a special director called R.K. Datta, was transferred overnight, one day before the retirement of the director, to the Home Ministry by creating a special post for him in the Home Ministry. His transfer was premature before his term was ending. He is transferred overnight, and a man who was brought 2 years ago, who has virtually no experience of anti-corruption work or CBI, etc. This gentleman who was moved out, Mr. Datta, has been in the CBI for 15 years, 3 years with the Karnataka Lokayukt Justice Hegde, did excellent work in anti-corruption, has the maximum experience in anti-corruption. He is moved out to a special post in the Home Ministry, and the gentleman who is appointed is a man who has been just brought from Gujarat, who has just had 2 years in the CBI, and he is appointed acting director. He is not even qualified to be appointed director. He is not senior enough to be appointed director, but he is made the acting director. So even the CBI is being sought to be completely destroyed as a supposedly independent anti-corruption institution. Then there is this assault on the National Human Rights Commission. Human Rights Commission is the apex body to a statutory body for protecting human rights. Now what they are doing is, for several years they kept several posts in the National Human Rights Commission vacant. After 2.5 years of keeping the post vacant, eventually they have selected a gentleman who was the vice president of the BJP. For the first time in the history of the Human Rights Commission, a working, serving politician has been appointed to the Human Rights Commission who has no experience at all in the field of human rights. So progressively we are seeing that the Information Commission is being destroyed. For 2 years they kept 4 posts in the Central Information Commission vacant. Eventually, after we moved the courts, several times we had to move the courts, several orders were passed by the courts, they appointed people, but again they appointed bureaucrats, etc., who are not very sensitive to this issue of right to information. So, and today the judiciary is also under attack. The judiciary is by far the most important institution for protecting human rights because it is under the Constitution, it is the judiciary which has been given the responsibility to ensure that human rights and fundamental rights of people are protected. So the Constitution empowers the higher judiciary, that is the Supreme Court and the High Court, to do this job. But this entire institution of the judiciary is under attack by this government in various ways. Firstly, they attack it by trying to take over the power of appointing judges. They tried it through this appointments commission that was struck down by the Supreme Court. So now they are stalling all appointments to the higher judiciary by just refusing to appoint. The law says, the Supreme Court says, that the government, that the collegium will recommend. Collegium recommended a large number of judges for being appointed to the High Court. Government can return the file once with reasons that, look, we think that this person is unfit for the following reasons. They sat on the matter for more than 7-8 months. After being repeatedly prodded by the Supreme Court, they finally returned the file of the majority of these people. I don't know what reasons they have given. But thereafter, the collegium has reiterated the bulk of those recommendations. And yet the government is still not appointing, just sitting on them. So this government has perfected or patented the art of destroying institutions by not appointing people, keeping vacancies in those and eventually appointing their own people, either as acting director or whatever. So that is why I say that today we stand at a crossroads in this country where there is a much more serious threat of fascism to this country than there has ever been, and certainly more serious than what existed during the emergency. The Supreme Court, as we all